Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I am finally ready to do a full review on the Halfbreed Blades LSK-01. I think it's technically called the LSK-01, but I don't know whether I'm supposed to say the 0 or not. It's the 1, I don't know. I'm gonna call it the LSK-1. If I'm wrong, let me know. But this is the large survival knife 1 from Halfbreed Blades, and they are an Australian knife company, which I think is pretty cool. I dig Australia, and this is, from what I understand, probably one of their most like flagship, like go-to fixed blade designs. Being a large survival knife, this thing is a tank. When they say large, they mean it. Not only in blade length, this is one of the longer fixed blades that I own for sure, but also in thickness. This D2 steel, or as they call it in Australia, their version of it is K110, is just over 1/4 of an inch thick. And this knife weighs just a hair over a pound. This is a pound of fixed blade right here. And it feels awesome for those reasons. The thickness of this blade stock just makes it feel impenetrable. I feel like I could stop a bullet with the broadside of this blade. It's just really, really intensely thick and kind of monstrous in a really fun and cool way. I've been doing quite a bit of testing with this knife. If you've watched, I did one field test video where I did some chopping, I did some stabbing and prying, I used the saw teeth a little bit to make some notches. Since then I have tried batoning with it, which it has done very well at. I've done more chopping, I've done more stabbing and prying, and I've just barely gotten this Teflon coating to scuff a little bit right at the tip. There are some scratches now. I don't know if you'll be able to see those, but it's just barely starting to wear, and I have been brutal on this knife. Everywhere I've been chopping, there's no edge deformation, no problems with the coating. It's got like surface scuffing, sure, but it's dirty in the fuller because I've been sawing with this so much. In between the saw teeth, there's like dust in it. I have been using and abusing this knife and loving every second of it. As somebody who likes using knives, I just found some blood on my hand, probably from climbing up here. Anyways, as somebody who likes excuses to get out and really use knives, this is such a fun thing for me to own and have in my collection. This knife is heavier and bigger than I would carry on like a typical day hike kind of thing, but I have found that having this knife in my pack and pulling it out when I'm in a fun spot to just hack at stuff, first of all, as a means of stress relief, great option. Go out and chop some wood. But second of all, it does really, really well at it. The shaping of this handle, I'm finding, is really good for my hands. I love the way that they've put these 2 notches in here, the little bit of belly between, another swell at the back. I've got a spot back here where if I needed to like pound a tent stake in or whatever I gotta do, the tang is exposed back there, and it is a thick tang, so it's totally reasonable to beat on. The jimping that is on the top of this spine here of the handle, I guess you would call it, is really well done. It's nice and chamfered. It gives traction without being sharp or aggressive. It's just a great indexing point. I like it a lot. The guard, which is integrally formed here as part of the tang, is an excellent guard. It keeps my foremost finger from sliding forward, gives my thumb a nice place to rest against and keep me from sliding forward. Even more so, if I want to choke up and put my thumb on this flat, it's a totally comfortable spot to put my thumb, although I find I like it best back here. In a hammer grip, this knife is great. You can chop all the way choked up, or you can choke way back. I like to put my middle finger right here in this groove, and this thing is a chopping machine. For not being an axe, this thing makes do very well. If I was to use this in like a real application of me really like having a use for this knife beyond just having fun with it, I feel like this actually has a great argument of being a really good camp knife. I would totally use this knife camping, especially if I'm like car camping, if I'm not trying to be ultra lightweight and like backpack in somewhere. If I don't mind how heavy and thick this thing is, it would make a great camp knife. It's hollow ground super, super well. The edge comes down to be a really good thickness. For being an outdoor focused knife, I don't want this to be so thin that it becomes at all fragile. With the amount of chopping I've done with this and prying and all that, I am certain it is definitely not fragile. But the hollow ground does actually get this to a decent spot where you can slice pretty well with it. I have tried feather sticking with it. Hollow grinds aren't usually my favorite type of grind to feather stick with, but this actually did better than I was expecting it to. I could certainly, absolutely build an awesome tinder bundle and get a fire started with this knife. Its ability to feather stick is absolutely on par. So, is this like a bushcrafting knife? No, but it's not even trying to be. This is a survival knife. I imagine because of its like somewhat tactical nature, there is definitely kind of like a militaristic influence on this, and it's really well done. I have been trying to see with all of my use if I could get beyond the factory edge of this D2. So far, like I said, I've been really rough on it. This D2 has held up really, really well. D2 is not my favorite steel in the world. Are there other steels I would like better, even like for this particular knife? Sure. But that being said, for an outdoor use application like this, D2 is a steel that definitely makes sense, and they seem to have heat treated it really well. As I've talked to the guys behind this company, just DMing on Instagram, it definitely sounds like they have their reasoning for choosing this steel, and they've got a philosophy behind it, and they're running with it, and I dig that. I like that this is, they've really thought every piece of this knife out, from the materials to the way they've worked it. It feels really, really cool. I also like that it seems like kind of a classic survival knife shape, but it feels unique to them. It feels to be done a little bit differently, and I can kind of feel uniqueness in it. It seems like a product that really comes from people who designed it themselves. They didn't just like plagiarize this from somebody else's work. Yeah, I really like it. It's come together super well. Everything about this handle, every time I hold and use this knife, I like it more because it's rounded super well. The rounding on this G10 is just excellent. The texture on it is perfect in my opinion for using out here like this. It's not so rough that when I'm using this knife for a half hour or an hour or however long I'm chopping at stuff with it, now I'm starting to feel like fatigue on my actual skin. It's not tearing me up, it's not giving me blisters. It's smooth enough to be really comfortable while providing enough traction to keep it from slipping. That's what handle material should do in my opinion. I don't like it when people are overly aggressive on G10 or micarta, whatever it is that they're finishing, to where it's just like all focused on traction, because I find the whole knife to become a hot spot when you do that, and it becomes uncomfortable really quick when you're actually using it, and when your hands getting sweaty and you start to blister up because edges are sharp. And no, everything on here is smooth and contoured. They've really shaped it well. The deeper you look at this handle, the more you see they've really taken their time to go ahead and just deliberately shape it for the human hand. And yeah, I dig that. I like it when knives look cool but also work, and this knife works really, really well. I had never heard of Halfbreed Blades until I won this knife from Knife Center. Well, I guess when I entered the giveaway, which I ultimately won, and I followed them before I won because I thought this knife looks really cool and it was intriguing, and they have a bunch of designs that look really cool, and so I'm really glad that I got to experience this one. Thanks again to Knife Center and to Halfbreed Blades for doing this giveaway, because I am pumped that I got to own this and try it out. And this is an expensive fixed blade, and it should be. This knife feels worth the dollar signs that are attached to it if you're purchasing one. I am so lucky that I got to get it for free to try and use and beat on, and yeah, I probably ultimately would not be surprised at all if I end up owning some more knives from Halfbreed Blades, because this is just done really well. It works super well. I've been nothing but happy with its performance. It makes me happy to use it, and there's something to be said about that. The knives are tools, right? And so at the end of the day, The most important thing about a tool is its performance. Does it do the job it's supposed to do? And yes, this knife does, but it's also, like, for me, knives are a hobby. Do I need to be out chopping wood here? No, I don't need to be. I could absolutely live my life without ever coming up into these mountains and finding excuses to do this kind of stuff. But does it bring me enjoyment to come out and do it? Absolutely. Is that enjoyment even larger, more? Is there more enjoyment? I don't know how to say that. Is it even better when the tool I'm using to do it is fun? Absolutely. So this tool is not only effective at what it's designed to do, but for me, it's a lot of fun. And it's just one of those things that's like a little bit over the top. This thickness, the all black motif, the sawback, all of this stuff is like so tactical and aggressive, but it all actually works really well. And every time I use it, I find myself smiling a whole lot and just enjoying it quite a bit. Now, if I was to actually pick one survival knife that I had to disappear up in the mountains with, and it was my one tool I could bring with me other than a water bottle or something, would this be the knife that I would pick? I don't know. It's big and it's heavy and it's thick, and it might be more than I would actually need. But that's kind of what makes it cool, is that it's more than you need. It's certainly not less. So take that for what it's worth. I guess that's kind of as concise as I can put the way I feel about this knife. And if you can't tell, I really like it. I think it's super cool. Would I hesitate to recommend that anybody buy one of these? No, especially if they want to get out and have fun with a knife, like I like to get out and have fun with a knife. It's just such a cool option, and it works so well. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the camera around real quick, show you some of the features of this knife up close from the other angle, and show you the sheath as well. And that will be my review of this guy. So let's turn you around. All right, so this is the knife in sheath. First of all, this sheath is awesome. Retention is excellent. There's no wiggle, no wobble, no rattle, nothing like that. This thing is just really dialed in as a Kydex sheath. All of the edges are ground down to a totally soft radius. There's no sharp pieces anywhere on here. It just really functions well. This retention system, I should say, is, I assume, for going on like molly webbing. I actually haven't tried putting this knife on molly webbing yet. I probably should have done that before the full review. I have tried real quick. It did come with a different attachment system, which is like I think it's called a tech lock, that's designed to go on a belt. I did throw that on real quick and throw this knife on a belt once, and I liked that. It worked, but I threw these back on because I meant to try it and just haven't yet. But it's cool that it comes with both. So you could strap this onto a pack, or you can use the other clip. You can put it on your belt. Either one really works. In my opinion, this knife is a little bit big and heavy for my preferences as a belt knife, and so I think it makes more sense with these just for my application. So that's why I put these back on here. But yeah, this sheath is excellent. I really, really like the sheath. Toss that down there. Now, the blade itself is hollow ground, and it's hollow ground super well. I talked about this already in front of the camera, but let me see if I can show. I don't know if it'll really show off, but the way that this hollow grind is done, it's excellent. I really, really like this hollow grind. This blade is an awesome length, I'm finding, for actually using. Like I said, this is longer and bigger than just about any other fixed blade that I have or have had or have really used. And I'm finding that, like, for chopping tasks and stuff, this blade length is welcome. Usually for more like bushcrafting style work, a shorter, smaller blade is fine because you're being a little more precise and you're kind of using other methods to get through stuff. But this thing is just a tank to choke back on and chop with. It works supremely well. It's really, really great. You can see the stock thickness is very thick. I was actually, this morning as I was putting this in my pack, I held it up next to my TRM Neutron, and the stock thickness of just this blade, or the tang here, is like the Neutron is just the tiniest bit thicker, the entire knife, scales, blade, everything, than this just stock is. So if that gives you some reference for how robust just over 1/4 inch blade stock really feels in hand, I mean, it's thicker than the entire handle of a slim folding knife. So the G10, as I mentioned, really well contoured and really well shaped. I feel like it was kind of lost on me the first time I held this knife, how intricate some of these, like, I guess you'd call them grooves are, how well they've worked this G10 to have this really natural shape in my hand. The whole thing feels really kind of organic in a fun and nice way. It's like a warm handle, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel angular or sharp in any direction. This knife actually feels great as well in a reverse grip, which with stock this thick and a tip like that, I have proven to myself that it is great at prying. So reverse grip is totally usable on here. It's a really well thought out knife, and before having it, I just thought, wow, that'll be a really cool thing to have. But I didn't know nearly how usable it would be out here. And so I'm really impressed that it's done as well as it has. And I'm super glad that I have this thing. This is a knife that, even if I don't like carry and use this regularly on hikes, I will find reasons to bring this knife out. And if I'm camping, especially from a car or where I'm not focused on being lightweight, this will be a knife that will come with me often, because it's just so much fun to use. And so much of the fun of being outdoors is using your gear and seeing what it's made of, and I just really get a kick out of that. So to have kind of tried to see what this is made of and not found its limits yet after being so abusive to it is really cool to me. It's a beast of a tool, and it's a lot of fun. And yeah, where the rubber actually meets the road, this thing functions so well. So there you have it. That is the Halfbreed Blades LSK-01 large survival knife. It's a really, really cool blade.